would never want something to be too beautiful, say, and just beautiful and not provocative. Something that is grotesque, something that's beautiful, something that just looks natural. My name is Vincent Pocsik. This is my studio space. I've always been downtown, which is important to me. You know, I went to SCI-Arc and SCI-Arc was downtown, so I always knew that. For me personally, it's good to get out of that and be in the mountains and be in the ocean and be able to breathe a little bit and get inspiration from all of that and sort of live that almost juxtaposed life between the two. I think I walk through life and I gather a lot of different aspects of texture, of form, and I keep that with me so that when I sit down to make something, it all comes out. A lot of what I'm doing is definitely trying to play between the ideas of beauty and grotesque and how that balance in form happens. Los Angeles, that's exactly what I'm talking about, that sort of gritty and the nature, you know, and that's really what I pull from when I'm making the work. I consider all of my pieces sculptural works, although they have a functional aspect to them. I mean, people do buy it as a sculptural work with the intent that it has that functional aspect. I have a couple pieces in my space right now. One is the chair lamp. It's a chair and a lamp. It really starts from this primary form, sort of grows up and turns into the lamp, and how that all comes together in a singular piece. Some of my dancers series, the two tables, two bodies that are staying together, and those are really about how the bodies play with each other, and the whole dancing aspect is how those forms play off each other, how they balance, how you can get this lightness and heaviness, trying to still play with that idea of beauty and grotesque and how that also balances with the heavy and light. The Yellow King series. I was inspired by the book, The Yellow King, and then reading a lot about that and just the darkness. I've been obsessed with tubes and sort of the industrial, what the tube is, and also how that creates the light. To me is really interesting. These tubes that turn into these bodies, and then the tubes are what are going to emit the light, and it's sort of about how that plays back and forth and how far something can be pushed as a pure anatomical form. I use primarily wood as a medium. Even though I played with a lot of composites and thing in grad school, I kind of wanted to get back to the richness of a natural material and how I can push that into still having the effects that you might get out of a resin composite. The material is important to me, but it's not what's of ultimate importance in the piece itself. I think that ideally I could make something out of wood in one scale and then potentially out of bronze in another scale and see how those materials in the same form make a different piece. I've chosen certain materials that have a richness in history, say, but I'm also interested in how those can read as, say, a plastic, or how they can be pushed in certain ways that maybe don't fully make sense so that they can have another layer to them. The way that I approach that is kind of almost having a disrespect for the material, maybe heavily bleaching something or doing something that isn't usually the approach that somebody would take. That creates a dialogue within the viewer's mind that I think is really interesting, but I never want the material to be the very first thing that somebody would be thinking about when seeing the piece. My process is definitely heavy in analog and digital. To me, it was actually more interesting to maybe erase the idea of the digital. In grad school, I was heavy digital. The idea of using the CNC or using the robot, it didn't mean anything. It was just another tool to get the end result of the form or whatever you're trying to actually achieve. I use the CNC, but then I carve over top of that and then finish over top and do a lot of handwork to massage the form into something that looks better in the real world. No matter how much projection mapping and stuff you do, you can never really understand a texture or a material on something in the computer. SCI-Arc really opened my mind to a vast amount in terms of culturally what was happening in LA and also just in the world, and just being in touch with contemporary philosophy, contemporary art, contemporary architecture. It really opened my mind to all of that, which inevitably opened my mind to possibilities of what my own practice could be. Maybe SCI-Arc influenced that approach in how I make things out of wood. I don't approach it from the aspect of, oh, I'm trying to learn how to generally be a woodworker. I approach it from, how do I make this specific form and what's the best way to make this specific form out of this specific material. I think that it's more about the approach in how something gets made. What I do can very much be seen as craftsman-like because there are aspects of hands-on, but it's actually not something that interests me so much. It's just more about how I can explore with my own hands to create the ideas that I would like to create. I see myself as an artist. Being an artist allows me to free up and not sort of pigeonhole my own mindset. I want to bring in the aspects of where my studio is in Los Angeles because I think it affects me personally in seeing a lot of things and seeing a lot of the just grittiness around me. So I want to play with those ideas as contrast in my work.